Oh, good morning, everyone. Hey, whoa! I just spilled my entire coffee all over the floor. That's going to be fantastic to clean up. So jokes of the day today. Um, so you've heard of the alphabet soup. Now get ready for Times New Ramen. So Times New Ramen. Pretty funny joke there. I'm completely thrown off by my coffee spilling everywhere. I apologize. I'm just going to move past the jokes of the day since my coffee is everywhere, and that was a really horrible move on my part. So we're going to move right into the facts of the day so I can get this cleaned up as soon as possible. So I had some friends reach out to me and ask me to do a video on Coast Guard history, hence the Coast Guard hat right here. So this is one of the hats I wore when I was in the Coast Guard. But a special shout out to Hernan, one of my coastie buddies, who actually asked me to talk about Coast Guard history. So here it goes. So did you guys know that the Coast Guard is actually one of the 5 branches of the U.S. military? So it's actually one of the oldest organizations of the federal government. So the Coast Guard was the only seagoing armed force that started in 1790. And then in 1798, that's when the Department of the Navy was established. So the Coast Guard's actually been around longer than the Navy. Sorry, all those people that were in the Navy. Coast Guard wins. So the 4th of August, 1790, George Washington, our president at that time, signed the Tariff Act. So that actually helped create and authorized the cutter service going into effect. So these were introduced to enforce federal tariffs and federal laws and to stop smuggling that was going on at that time. So the revenue cutter service just kept growing during this time, basically up until 1915, when you saw that the revenue cutter service actually became part of the U.S. life-saving service, got added in or merged in with it. So this is when it was officially renamed the Coast Guard. Was in 1915 when the U.S. Life-Saving Service merged with the Revenue Cutter Service. So it made it the only maritime service dedicated to saving lives at sea and also upholding maritime laws, which different international laws are part of that. Smuggling, different drugs, and international norms, and different fishing laws, and enforcing the U.S. fishing laws in exclusive zones where only U.S. fishermen can fish in. That's one of the jobs of the Coast Guard, right? Is that. Also, another cool thing the Coast Guard does under wartime, they actually fall under the Department of the Navy. So the heads of the Coast Guard and the head of the Navy actually operate together, and they run the Department of the Navy with the Coast Guard in it during wartime. So the Coast Guard's been in every major war that the U.S. has been part of, and they've done some amazing things. Right, World War II, when storming the beaches in Normandy, the Coast Guard was some of those small boats that were coming in. They were the ones driving those boats up to the ship up to the beach, and looking death right in the face and confronting an enemy right there. But anyways, let's get back to the timeline of the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard in 1939, the Franklin Roosevelt ordered the transfer of the lighthouse service. So lighthouses in the U.S. used to be operated by people, right? They were everything wasn't automatic; it was manual. So it was lighting the actual light or turning it on. That whole process. Of course, there's lighthouses all along our coastlines, also in like the big lakes, like Michigan, Lake Erie, all that kind of stuff. There's lighthouses. So the Coast Guard took that, and the lighthouse service became part of the Coast Guard at that time. So they became in charge of maritime navigation. So the Coast Guard still does this to today. They are part of maritime navigation, helping maintain buoys, aids to navigation that are in the middle of the ocean, and essentially allowing for the safe passage of cargo ships and personal vessels as well. And then in 1946, Congress permanently transfers the Commerce Department's Bureau of Maritime Inspection and Navigation to the Coast Guard. So putting merchant marine licensing and merchant vessel safety in its control. So that's what the Coast Guard did in 1946 with authorization of Congress. In 1967, the Coast Guard was transferred to the Department of Transportation. And then in 2003, the Coast Guard again was transferred. This time it was transferred to the Department of Homeland Security, where it currently is, right? So in Washington, D.C., when you actually you go there, you will see some Coast Guard members in the Department of Homeland Security building. And that's because we fall under the Department of Homeland Security, where they currently operate out of, right? But they are still one of the 5 branches of the military with the smallest active duty force, with probably some of the greatest job responsibilities for one of our militaries, with the least amount of operating budget out of any of our militaries. There's a huge issue with this. So speak up to your congressman and tell them that we need more icebreakers, because that is a huge thing that the Coast Guard is suffering from, is a lack of icebreakers. And as the poles keep shifting, as ice kind of goes back right in those pole regions, we need the ability to navigate those waters safely. Only way to do that, icebreakers. So Congress, do your job, get some money to the Coast Guard and help us navigate water safely. All right. Hey, so those were just some quick facts about the Coast Guard. I hope you guys enjoyed them. Coast Guard was a huge part of my life, 4 years of it. Traveled the world, got to see amazing places, went to Alaska, went to the North Pole, got to see polar bears floating on icebergs right by me, traveled down to South America, stopped a lot of different illicit things from coming into this country. I went to Haiti in 2010 during the earthquake. Coast Guard does a lot of things, a lot of awesome things. And thank you all my Coasties that are out there still serving. I appreciate each of you. Of the Coast Guard is Semper Gumby, meaning always flexible. So this is something I still use to this day. Being always flexible is an important thing, right? It still is a challenge for me, but I'm still getting through that and learning lessons along the way. So one thing I learned is just to let go and know some things are completely out of your control, right? That you cannot control everything around you. So that's one of the things with the motto Semper Gumby, always flexible. And life is just one grand adventure, family and friends. And just all these lessons you learn along the way, just take them in and just remember to be flexible and to just try to grow during those times. So here's my questions that I'll leave you guys with. What areas do you need to be more flexible in? So maybe write those down. It's always good to jot these things down. What areas are you currently practicing flexibility? And then, practicing flexibility, it takes some mental fortitude. You're going to have to build these things up and to grow and to continue to expand upon them. So just try to write them down. Write down the things you need to grow in. Those are the things I would personally do, and I highly recommend. And I hope you guys got something from this video today. I got to go clean up my coffee mess because it's an absolute disaster. And if I don't, it's going to be an issue. All right. Hey, I'll see you guys on tomorrow. Take care. And I hope you guys enjoy this and learn something about the Coast Guard. Go Coasties!